Look at this question. Some people prefer to work for a large company, while others prefer to work for a small company. Which do you prefer and why? Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. Now, imagine that you have 15 seconds to prepare your response, and then 45 seconds to answer this question. If that sounds like a challenge, keep watching this video. My name is Anastasia. I scored 119 on the TOEFL and have been helping students prepare for this test for more than 10 years. In this video, I'll give you 10 practical tips to help you nail the TOEFL speaking section. The first tip on our list is understand the structure. The speaking section is already quite intense, so to succeed on test day, you need to eliminate any factor that might make you even more anxious. Lack of familiarity with the structure of the test included. You'll see 4 questions. 1 is the independent speaking question. And what you just saw is a typical example of it. You'll have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. The next 3 are integrated speaking questions. They ask you to read, listen, and then summarize what you've learned. Question 2 is often called campus announcement because it'll have a text and a conversation about a change on campus. Question 3 is what I call a general to specific question. You'll have a short text that explains the concept in general words. Then, you'll hear a lecture where the professor explains this concept. Your prep time for these 2 questions is 30 seconds. Your answer time is 60 seconds. Finally, question 4 is an academic lecture that you'll need to listen to and summarize. There is no reading passage this time, so you'll have 20 seconds to prepare. You'll still have 60 seconds to speak. However, when I say that you should understand the structure of the speaking section, I don't mean learning the facts I just told you. Go into more detail. For example, you need to know that in question 2, you'll need to find the main idea of the text and 2 supporting ideas. For example, the university wants to renovate the library because it's outdated and always overcrowded. When answering, combine the main idea and the supporting points into one long sentence. This will save you time, which you can use later to summarize the conversation, and will help you use a complex sentence in your response. You also need to know that the lectures in questions 3 and 4 are usually given in many short sentences, while your job is to summarize them in a few longer sentences to save time. Details like that are extremely important, because if you don't know them, you'll always feel like you're playing roulette, where your speaking score depends on pure chance. Instead, you want to make sure you've broken down each question in enough detail that you can approach it almost mechanically, like a robot. This way, you'll keep anxiety at bay and increase your chances of scoring high every time. Tip number 2, speak clearly, not quickly. A common problem many students have is that they think they have to speak super fast, with no pauses, not a single one. But that's just not realistic. When people try to do that, they end up making things worse by stressing themselves out even more. They get so focused on speed that they end up pausing or stuttering a lot more than they normally would. I've seen this happen a lot. Many of my students begin by telling me about their situation in fluent and confident English. But when the time comes to answer the first TOEFL question, it's as if I'm listening to someone else. Their responses become weak, they make many mistakes, and some may not even finish their thoughts. It's all because of stress, even in your native language. When you're under pressure, you'd be surprised at how much harder it is to express yourself. So don't add unnecessary stress by chasing speed. Instead, focus on clarity and pacing. Even if you speak more slowly, being understood is the most important thing. The third tip is use transition words. I'm not saying you should start every sentence with a linking word. You also don't need to use overly formal transition words like in addition, hence, or nevertheless. But using smooth transitions such as a result, on top of that, however, and for example, can really help structure your speech logically and make it more coherent. Just be sure to practice using these words beforehand so that they flow naturally when you speak. Tip number 4. Remember that note-taking is key for integrated speaking questions. In my private lessons, I always devote at least one session to note-taking because it's so important. Good notes account for about 60% of your success on questions 2, 3, and 4. For example, when you're working on question 2, write down the main idea and 2 supporting points as you read it. Let's say the passage looks like this. Your notes might be: eliminate sculpture classes, not enough students interested, sculpture professor retiring, limited budget. You don't need to worry about grammar in your notes. Always focus on writing down keywords and main ideas to keep your response organized. Also, don't write full sentences. It wastes time. Remember that your notes from the reading will help you predict the content of the listening section. For example, I know that the active speaker in this conversation will first talk about the fact that not enough students are interested in the course, and then discuss the situation with the professor. He or she may agree or disagree, but they will address each point in that order. Speaking of paraphrases, our 5th tip is to practice paraphrasing. To succeed on the TOEFL speaking section, you'll need to rephrase information from lectures and reading passages. You don't have to change every single word in a text or lecture. Just replace some of them. For example, say eliminate instead of discontinue. Think of it more as simplifying the information you've read or heard, or saying it in different words. For example, instead of saying the professor is retiring, you might say the professor is stepping down. The professor is leaving the university. I usually suggest that you paraphrase a little more from the reading than from the listening, because that's the information you can see. However, you can still use some words from the text, especially if they're difficult to replace with synonyms or paraphrases. This won't affect your score. To practice this skill, think of synonyms for all the words you encounter in your speaking practice and daily life. Play a little game with yourself. Whenever you see something or think of a word in English, think of several other ways to say the same thing. This exercise will really help you expand your vocabulary and start paraphrasing quickly. Tip number 6. Work on pronunciation. You don't need a perfect accent, but clear pronunciation is essential. Work on tricky words and sounds that you find difficult. You can also practice on the daily dictation website. If you choose the TOEFL listening section there, you'll see many conversations and lectures where you can listen and repeat after the speaker. The vocabulary used in these recordings is very similar to the vocabulary you'll see on the TOEFL speaking test. So, try mimicking the speaker's pronunciation and intonation, and you'll soon see huge improvements. Tip number 7 is answer questions directly. This tip is especially true for the first question on the TOEFL speaking test. Many students start to go off topic and waste time. Instead, you need to answer the prompt directly and stay on point throughout your answer. This is where TOEFL speaking templates come in handy. If you have a set phrase that you start each answer with, you'll save a lot of time elaborating on your points and will be able to get a higher score. You can find high-scoring speaking and writing templates in our TOEFL course. Try to drill them first. Read each template out loud at least 4 to 5 times to make sure you don't stumble. Then, start practicing. Answer question after question using the template until it becomes natural and easy. This way, no matter what you're asked on test day, you'll feel confident and be able to give effective answers. We'll also take you through complete reading tests and explain how to approach each question quickly and effectively. For example, many students struggle with the insert text question, but there is a simple strategy that will allow you to ace it without wasting time. I'm leaving the link in the description below. Click on it and become part of our TOEFL community. Tip 8. Create extremely long sentences daily. This is one of my favorite TOEFL speaking exercises these days. My students definitely know this activity because I ask them to make sentences like this all the time. Why do you need these sentences? As I just said, the biggest challenge in questions 3 and 4 is that you don't have enough time to include all the details. Therefore, you should use longer sentences that allow you to present many details quicker. This is where words like which, and, so, and as a result, when, even though, while, if, and others come in handy. To practice these, try to create long sentences on a daily basis. For example, take any sentence starter. Let's say, when I graduated from college. Then start speaking. Try to say as much as you can in one sentence without breaking it. You're free to say whatever comes to mind. The main goal is to keep it all in one sentence. You could say, when I graduated from college, I started applying for jobs which took longer than I expected, and I felt discouraged at times, so I decided to take some online courses to improve my skills. And as a result, I became more confident in interviews, which helped me secure a job offer. And when I finally got the job, I realized how important it is to stay persistent, even when things don't go as planned right away. And so on. You get the idea. Using longer sentences allows you to avoid the pauses that are inevitable in between shorter sentences. And that, in turn, saves you time. So, if you have a few minutes to spare, create 2 to 3 sentences like this and see how long you can go. You can also keep up the challenge by making each subsequent sentence longer than the previous one. Tip number 9, read out loud daily. Reading aloud helps reduce pauses and hesitations in your speech. Simply read out loud for 2 to 3 minutes each day. Try to avoid pauses. Use proper intonation and sound as clear as possible. It seems simple, but I'm sure you'll have a hard time avoiding hesitations and pauses at first. As you continue to work on this skill, your reading will become much more fluent, and so will your speaking. Most of my students notice the results within a few days. Let me know how this exercise works for you. Finally, the last tip is learn to recover from mistakes. As you've probably figured out, a big part of your success, about 40 to 50%, comes from staying focused and managing stress. If you stumble, freeze, or make a mistake, quickly correct yourself and move on. Graders value recovery more than perfection. If you start beating yourself up over a mistake, you'll only make more and damage your score. So, no matter what, don't stop halfway through your answer, even if you pause or made mistakes along the way. Trust me, you'll be glad you mastered this skill when the test day comes. These are 10 tips that will definitely help you improve your TOEFL speaking score. Let me know in the comments which ones you already knew and which ones were new to you. For a fun little challenge, try making up an extremely long sentence and post it below. We'll see who can come up with the longest one. If you're currently preparing for the test and want to check how ready you are, click here to have your writing and speaking scores evaluated. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks on how to ace the TOEFL test. And remember, scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL isn't rocket science. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time!